now.
Oh,
Okay, sorry about
awesome.
that, but maybe it's better that the chit chat
Problem.
in the beginning didn't go into the recording. But
No problem.
Daisy, I appreciate your answer. Definitely, I think on the tech side, but the internet, the computer, different devices that we needed to work effectively. I think those are easier to be solved.
Yeah.
It's more importantly, how do you organize your schedule? How do you work more effectively at home? I
Sure.
think Elvis and I were based in the US. Obviously, our quarantine protocols are very different. And again, he's in California, I'm in North Dakota. Very different states, very different rules, very different people, very different mentalities. So I think it's quite challenging for those who are based in the US. Like Elvis, have you been fully vaccinated?
Yes.
When did you get your vaccination?
I think that was last month.
Last month. Okay, yeah, because here in North Dakota, I have a faster rollout. I get my vaccination back in March already. So I'm fully vaccinated for more than half a year. So it really varies. I think in New Zealand is still a challenge to get everyone vaccinated because there's a shortage. You have to prioritize, the weak group, right? The elderly, the people with certain diseases and so forth. And I think we can come to our part a bit later. So Diego, do you share the same experiences like working in New Zealand with working under that quarantine protocol and everything?
Yeah, for me, yes, exactly. We went through the same procedure as Daisy talked about. Even in Auckland, it was a little bit more difficult because at a point we had to go through another 3 weeks of level 4, which is like the highest level of limitations and isolation. And there were some specific issues for me. For example, for me being away from my wife sort of means that I have to go through that alone. So I think that psychologically it could be very, very difficult to go through. And however, I like to look at that from the viewpoint of my profession, like as a teacher, university teacher at that time, because when it hit, we were in the middle of the whole teaching session, because our classes begins typically, our first semester begins from February all the way, it goes to the end of May. So we had to change so many things because we didn't have face-to-face classes anymore. We had to go online. And even though Massey University traditionally is an online teaching institute, we are the biggest provider of online teaching in the whole Oceania. Still, it was very difficult for us. It shows us how much we are not ready for actual doing that job infrastructurally, specifically dealing with our students from China, because a huge amount of our students come from China. And so we are dealing with so many issues regarding the internet in China, like the censorships, access, so many things works here, internet speed. So that was a big challenge, but I think that we have already talked a lot about the problems that it brought up, but there are also some opportunities. I think pandemic itself, it was a fast forward to future. This is a route that anyhow we had to take. We could face it like in 10 years or in 15 years or in 20 years, I don't know, but we have to face it right now and make sure that that we are using technology and the affordances that comes with that to increase our efficiency in the workplace. And I'm very happy with that aspects of the thing that happened, because I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, you're destroying my structure because I was saving that question for the last. So moving forward,
Sorry about that, Chen.
yeah, you're always ruining my plan. Just can't work with you.
Yeah. You're going to ask that question.
But okay, let's turn to Elvis. What is your working experience during COVID?
I actually hope I don't get to destroy any of your plans.
Go ahead. It cannot be further destroyed. It's already shattered.
Because I do have a lot to actually talk about. I think I do relate with every single one of you, especially with Daisy, because I have a family as well. Um, and I have two kids, at home. And it, one of the challenges for me really was adjusting to the idea of working from home. And the reason why it was quite challenging for me in particular is because I had developed a routine, a tradition, a ritual where I do not work from home. I don't even take my laptop to the house. So if I have a lot of work to do, for instance, I would rather stay longer hours in the office and get the work done, drop everything. Once I get home, I don't do any work. When I'm home, it's time to spend time with the kids and it's time to spend time with my wife. So that's a ritual, a tradition I have had for a very long time, and it's just been going really well. So suddenly COVID hits and we are told, oh, well, you can't actually have access to your office anymore. You have to work from home. To be honest with you, it took me months to be able to adjust to that reality because I noticed that even psychologically, I wasn't programmed to work from home. And because of that, even my body, I really began to notice the connection that, that there was a connection between just that mental, psychological consciousness that you don't work from home. It sort of has a way of programming your body to react in certain ways when you're at home. So even though I was able to tell myself that, okay, now you're working from home. In other words, trying to reprogram my mind and psychology to understand that this is not your new reality. It took my body a very long time to catch up to that consciousness, to that new psychological reality. So I felt very demotivated anytime I was home. I just wasn't in the mood to work at all. So it took me months to actually catch up. I couldn't even go to a cafe. I couldn't go anywhere. I just had to figure out a way to get it done. And it was even more challenging for me because we don't have a very big house. We don't have a very big house. We just have like a two-bedroom apartment. So, my wife and I have a room, and the kids have their room. So, and I don't have an office space at home. Uh, and it's so important to have an office space because in that kind of condition, there's no way I can work peacefully or with calm. My daughter is 3 years old and she's a daddy's girl, So, I mean, before I get home, she's already waiting for me in front of the door, So, and when I get home, she knows, she already knows this is her time. This is her daddy-daughter time, to play and do all of that. So it was a big adjustment for her as well, that daddy's home, but he's not really interested in me. He's interested in something else. He's locking himself, in his room. So for me, I had to, find some space in my room, and I got a table because since I never used to work from home, I didn't need it. And even still so, I could be teaching, my daughter, she just would bang, she keeps just banging at the door, and calling daddy, 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 So it was very, very difficult, for me. When it comes to balancing, family, working from home, and putting all of that together. But there are also some other dimensions that I would like to talk about, because remember that I moved here in August 2019, and by March we were being asked to go back home. So I was basically in the middle of my second semester here at Cal State San Marcos. So I was still in the process of integrating, of adjusting to my new education, to my new work environment, as well as to the new society as well. So I was still trying to learn a lot of things, to understand a lot of things. So for me, that was it sort of just it halted my integration and adjustment process. And all this while we've literally been home, really going nowhere, apart from the supermarket with mask on and all of that. You're not visiting anyone. You're not going to any places to see places or anything like that. You're just locked up at home, so I feel like it really interrupted, that process of integration, as well, not just for me, but even for, my family in general. Even though we've been here since 2019, we're in 2021, we still feel very new here. We still feel like we're still trying to understand how things really, really work here. And one last aspect that I would really want to talk about which is a very significant one for me. It was a significant challenge for me, especially professionally, is in the area of teaching. Now, let me just give you some background. So I have been one of those who did not like online learning as a student and as a teacher. So I didn't really like it, and I think the reason for me was because my pedagogy relies tremendously on in-person interaction. In-person interaction, classroom discussion, engagement. I love to engage students, in the classroom, and when I am in the classroom with students, I just feel a special connection, with my students, that I don't feel anything can replace that experience, that moment that I have. Even if I meet with them online, it's just never the same, like just having that in-person connection feeling, that you have when you're with students in the classroom. So because of that, I wasn't a fan. I mean, I thought online teaching learning was okay, that, well, in certain circumstances, people are working, they have busy lives, nobody has time to sit in the classroom for hours, and that would work and all of that. But I wasn't a fan of it. So suddenly I'm being told, well, you have to teach online. Now, not only was it challenging because I wasn't a fan, the second reason why it was very difficult for me was because I had never taught online before. So I moved to this new university, and in the middle of my second semester, I'm being asked to teach online, and I've never done that before. I don't even know how it works. So suddenly I really began to feel incompetent. I really began to feel unprepared, for it. I wasn't hired to teach online. I was hired to teach face to face. If it's face to face, I can just get into the classroom at any second, and I would feel comfortable and feel like, oh, I got this. But so now I was in a space where I had to figure out how to reskill myself in order to be effective in this new scenario, in this new setting that COVID had produced for us. So I, thankfully enough, my university did offer a lot of training sessions, a lot of workshops, to help people like myself who have no experience teaching online, to sort of reskill them and help them develop their courses, in such a way that they're suitable for online spaces. I also was able to take a course. I was able to complete a postgraduate degree in teacher education, focusing specifically on facilitating learning in online spaces, from Yam University of Applied Sciences, which was also very helpful. So that challenge also became a moment of growth for me, which echoes what Diaco talked about opportunity. It also became an opportunity for me to reskill myself, to develop myself, so that I can be able to meet up to the expectation. And all of the workshops I took, that I'm even still taking right now, and the degree program that I completed, they were so helpful to me. Number one, it redefined my perception towards online learning, because now one of the things I realized is that uh, I actually did not have an accurate or a complete understanding, of online learning. I actually did not know some of these amazing ways that we can actually engage students, through in online spaces. I wasn't aware that there were all of these other interesting tools and, interesting opportunities through which we can engage students in online spaces. So I really began to learn more about online learning, and that really redefined the way that I see it, and I got exposed to the different things, opportunities that online learning as well provides for our students and for us in society. So it was a great moment of growth, for me, as well. And interestingly, I was just sharing this with my wife the other day. The highest course evaluations I've had actually have been for my online classes. I just told my wife jokingly, like, oh my God, I actually just feel like this should continue. Like if we can just stay online, because it seems like it's really working well for me, now. So yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, those have been some of the major challenges that I have experienced, since COVID and the transition, to online learning and all of that.
All right.
Well, I think that Elvis, based on what you presented today, you have gone so far in teaching online.
Yeah.
Very good job. But Cheng, may I say something here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think basically I took some notes from what Elvis mentioned. One of the very interesting things I really noticed that this pandemic has brought up about online, about working, is basically taking away or demolishing this boundary that we have between workplace and life place, like our personal life. During the pandemic, I was living with some friends of mine, basically a couple. So this friend of mine used to go to work every day, regular like office job, 8 o'clock, coming back at 4 o'clock. And when he arrives at home, basically it's done. So it's just like life goes on. But once the pandemic happened, I noticed that he wakes up 8 in the morning and even without noticing, he's just working until like 10, sometimes 12 at night, because you really don't have an idea that where works begin, where life begins. It's a very interesting thing that I totally relate with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of good points being made here. I think it just attitude towards online learning. That's my attitude too. I thought online learning was a scam. That's just if you think about how many universities are selling programs online, right? I think I'm not going to criticize Massey, because that's the international students is a very important revenue to Massey. In the US, because it's a competition, right?
Yeah.
Different states have different fees, and depending on where you live, so it's a huge. There's a very fierce competition. There's a lot of advertising out there, including some of the big name universities. They're offering online programs like come study with us and pay us. And I think this is very common, right, across many universities. So I was thought, okay, these guys are just selling, education for money. So that's my attitude towards online learning too. And it's now, I think it's kind of the same, but Diago has mentioned it. COVID has accelerated the future, right? It is now you have to do online learning, and this is the only way that you can meet. So how do you make this work? I'm sure we all have struggled. We all have, even with those with online learning, because you always had it like a backup. Online learning is always different. it had the stigma of not being as good as in-person learning, right? Even though it works, but it's not as good. A lot of us had that impression, but just how to organize online sessions more effectively. I'm sure we've all learned some lessons. And about the discussion on physical space too, and this is actually my next question for you. So you were talking about that we're forced to work from home and it's really difficult. And I think this is a question we all face as academics, right? Uh, Theoretically speaking, we can do our work anywhere, anytime, right? And this is a blessing at the same time as a curse, right? It's like, okay, what do you actually need to work, right? So it's just really, it could go easily both ways. And when we're forced to, I prefer to work at home just for a day or two, right? Because I like it. But now I'm forced to work at home. It's different. There's a part of me that's resisting that change. So I want to go out, but you can't. So you get stuck here, and then you have to just carry on. So what are some of the tips that you have used in the past that have worked for you? I think Elvis mentioned that he bought himself a table. Small things like that sometimes may not realize, but those may have a huge impact on your working life. I think we can have Daisy go first.
Sure, my honor. I'm just about to say, actually here in New Zealand, we are a little bit better. When I say better, it's not in terms of the number of the deaths from the COVID, but actually what I said better means when we went to the lockdown stage, we were still given that flexibility or the chance that we can walk out of our place, our residential place. We can still, for example, go to supermarket, of course, with your mask on, and also at certain protocol you need to follow. And also some restaurants, they are still doing like delivery at least. And another good thing is about, because we are a country surrounded by all the greens. So for me, take me as an example, I live in a place with surrounded by the bush, so which is technically it's not very good. I mean, technologically it's not good because they cause the problem of the internet connection. But on the other side, which is quite good for me or the family during the lockdown, that case we can still step out of our house. I remember clearly at the lockdown stage, we still able to schedule half an hour every day to go outside, just straight into a park, just nearby, about like 5 minutes away, and then we already in the bush, and then we can take a bushwalk for about half an hour, and then we come back and resume the struggling with the technical bit. So that's the luxury that we really, really enjoy. And also the community being very supportive, people like supporting each other, asking, for example, my neighbor, I just send a quick message to my neighbor asking, an elderly lady living alone by herself, asking if you need some help, for example, grocery shopping during in the supermarket, we can definitely help. And also we have that like a Facebook group in the community where we share information. People will tell each other that which part of the community is still open, like the cafe or the convenience store, we call it a dairy store, still open for business, and where you can get your daily necessities from. So that part I truly enjoy. In terms of, I mean, for me, as an example, I didn't have that teaching background, but in my daily job, I did have a lot of interaction with international students. Just like Elvis just mentioned, I don't like that online idea as well, because in my daily job, it's very hard to do things online, right? And then we suddenly ended up needed to interact with students by just calling them or sending them emails asking, are you still okay? If you need any help, let us know. And there's a very severe, bad cases happen to one of my students psychologically. She has that intention of committing suicide during that period of time. I think she has that problem long time ago, but COVID just accelerated that process, and it's really, really hard for us to reach her through, you know, all the online platforms or you know, digital technology bit. Even though by the end, luckily that lockdown stage didn't last long enough. I mean, like a couple of weeks later, then we were told that, well, actually the first lockdown lasted quite long, right, Diego? I remember it's like more than a month, 1.5 months. So that's like 6 weeks. That's really long enough for us. A lot of things happen and changes a lot of the landscape of our, you know, work, the style, we work style and our lifestyle and all the sort of things, the way that you do things, it's like completely different from that on. But having said that, the positive part is we adapted to it. And then we had no choice, right? At that time, what could you do? Life still needs to carry on, continue. The first lockdown, we didn't know how long is that going to last. So we just try to adapt that as much as we can at that time. But the positive side is that apart from adapting to it, and then we are developing fast. For example, I was doing my third year, still third year, second year PhD study, and then I was meant to do data collection, and my part was like face-to-face interview. Okay, so again face-to-face, and then I suddenly realized, okay, I can't do face-to-face. Then I reached out to my participants by saying that, okay, are you okay? Are you fine of doing your interview through online, all those social media platforms like WeChat, FaceTime, Zoom, WhatsApp, you name it. And then surprisingly, I got a lot of positive feedbacks. I think people, you know, getting very isolated at that time. And then it was a really good chance to reach out to your target audiences. So I got most of my data collected during that particular period of time. So I was really grateful that I was able to do that, because once the whole cycle was over and then life is back to normal again, and then people getting busy. And then it's getting harder right now to reach out to my target audience as I used to be able to. Yeah, so that's a little bit of my experience or adventures.
Okay, again, I appreciate you guys being so positive, you know, talking about your traumatizing experiences, like working as suicide prevention hotline, and then still being able to end on a positive note. So yeah, so I'm glad you guys still have that positive attitude. I think, you know, in a way, our work has been impacted a lot in not significant ways by COVID, but you know, sometimes to think about it, we're not definitely the worst. Think about communication, teaching, and research. There's an alternative for us, right? You know, we can't teach in person, we can teach it online. For a lot of our research data collection, for instance, we can meet face to face, we can conduct online interviews. It's not the same, but it will be able to still have, you know, have access to the information. But if you think about some of our other colleagues, for instance, working in chemistry, you know, they can't go to the lab because of this. So the research is completely stopped, right? So there's nothing they can do. I can't go to the lab, right? There can't be multiple people there at the same time. So you can't work. And we have, I'm not sure, I think other universities have a media lab here too. Just right before COVID, one of our colleagues got a huge funding. He was able to get a few robots in the media lab right here. And the robots just been sitting there for 2 years now. Just, you know, you can't do anything there, right? You need to have the lab, you have multiple people there to work with the technology, collect data and so forth. And just, you know, things not happening. But yet we're not, you know, at least we're not the worst situation right here. So here, I think Daisy has mentioned building that community, building that resistance, resilience by working together. I think a lot of practice we're seeing here too. I think in the beginning, in the US, it's also very funny as for this part of the US, for the low income families, their kids rely on the school provided lunch. So that is, is provided by I think by the state. So it's subsidized. So if you're going to school, your kids are going to get free lunch. So if you're missing that meal, it means a lot for some of the families because that's the most nutritious meal the kids is going to get all day. So missing that meal means they don't have enough food. So just in the very beginning, I think a lot of projects here are just delivering lunch to different families to help out with those kids. So just the different things, again, coming back to that community resilience, right? Okay. Anything else you want to share, Diego? How do you organize your workplace? Like say you just give an example about your former roommate not being able to draw the line between work and life. Are there some of the things you have tried that have worked for you?
In my case, it was a little bit different because I'm very much comfortable with technology and doing the things online. I've always have my office set up at home. So for me, it was the easiest part working from home. I didn't have lots of problem doing that. But I think the most important problem was to deliver what I supposed to deliver to the people who were not ready for that. I was teaching to my internal students and even offshore students, so that they are new category of the students who are stuck outside of New Zealand. They are our internal students, face-to-face students, but they are stuck outside of New Zealand because our borders are shut down, so they cannot come back. So those students had not signed up for any online education. But suddenly, here they go. They have to do that. And it relates to something that you brought up, Cheng, before about like how distance studies looks like a scam to you. Interestingly, my best students are my distance students because they're usually mature students. They are very motivated. You try to use their best of time, just making a balance between their work, because most of them work full time, and also do their studies whenever they can. So very much motivated. I really enjoy working with them. But our internal students are not ready for that kind of things. And how you make that balance, how you convince them to be motivated to do the workshops, the assignments, all of those things online. That was a big issue. And also we had the issue of final exam at a point. So the final exam are very important for us. We had to get rid of them because we did not have the infrastructure to run those final exams online. So we had to design replacement or substitution assignments instead. That was a big problem because we had to do that in a very short amount of time, and we had to do that like online compatible. So those were the major challenges that I faced. Personally, I didn't suffer a lot from working from home, but I think that my students suffered a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just very unique situation, like the mass experiencing. Like here, I don't have many international students at all. We have a few graduate students that are coming from outside. We had to zoom in, but for the majority of our students are, just from here. I think probably obvious case will be very similar. I think New Zealand or Massey is just very. I think it's a typical case in that region where attracting international students is one of the major strategies, right? And how to, make sure the student's success in that way, students not even there. How do you make sure they have learned, that you're not just giving away certificates for nothing? So I think as a teacher, as a responsible teacher, it's hard to balance these, right?
Yes.
I can give everyone a pass, it'll be easy, but have you actually learned? Because that's what we really care about, student learning. And this is where we have to put in extra efforts. And unfortunately, a lot of those, I believe, a lot of those burden has been passed down by the upper management, right? They want things to work, but in the end of the day, we're the ones on the front line, interacting with students on a daily basis, delivering teaching materials, making sure they're learning. But we're getting support, but whether those support are sufficient are exactly what we need. So those are still in question. I think hopefully the upper management will take this chance as a point of reflection. Moving forward, for future online education, what are the things we need to do, what are more efforts we want to put in, and so forth. Okay, I can switch to Elvis. Is there anything else you've done besides buying a table?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if there's anyone who has had the kind of experience that I have had, transitioning online, I think there are a few things that I would like to say that I believe would be very helpful to you, because I think that they really were to me. But before I actually go to that, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but I just thought for a second that that's such an interesting discussion to have. I mean, what you just said, Cheng, because it's something that I have had to question and I've had to think about a lot during this, time of online teaching, especially, within the context of a pandemic, because on the one hand, we feel the responsibility to practice some sort of empathetic pedagogy, but on the other hand, we also have the responsibility to uphold the standards, of the education that we are offering. And one of the questions I've had to ask myself during this time is where the balance is, and I think that's such an interesting conversation and discussion to actually have. I think it has a lot of implications for the future as well. But let me go back to the few tips I wanted to point out, to help anyone out there that could be listening. The first thing I think it's really important is for you to actually know yourself. This is really important because you need to understand how you learn. So for instance, for me, I learn better in environments that are quiet, peaceful. Some of the people, my wife, for instance, she could have her headsets on and she's reading. And I'm like, how does that work? How do you, like, when I really want to study or work, I don't even want to see anybody. I just want to be alone. And so it was really hard for me, for instance, in Finland, like to share offices with people, because I just don't like to have to see anybody when I really want to work. I just want to be alone in the quiet and the silence, and then just do my stuff. But because I understand that that's sort of how it works for me personally, then I have to find ways to make sure that that kind of setting of physical space, as Cheng talked about, is provided so that I can become more efficient, in what I am doing. So for me, for instance, one of the things when I noticed that it just cannot work for me in my house, because I can, even if I close the door of my room, my wife would come in, my daughter would come in, I just cannot focus. I don't like the in and out, and I just want to be alone, So one of the things I did, as I was thinking about it, one day, I had to transform my storage to a little office. Now, my storage is a very tiny space where maybe just a table and a chair, can fit. But the good thing about it is that it is separate from the house. So you can actually close the house, it's connected to the house, but it's separate from the house in itself. So I had to transform my storage into my office. And that really helped me in so many ways. you know, and immediately my university said, hey, you can now have access to your office. I started coming to my office to work. So I'm actually in my office right now, and it's summer, and I'm actually the only one in this building right now, you know. And the only reason why I come here is because I know this is my comfort zone when it comes to learning, when it comes to studying. This is where I would be the most efficient. So if you know what works for you, then it's actually easier to figure out what is it that you need, you know, within that space that you are. That would be very that would make you to become efficient. The other thing I want to talk about is you have to encourage yourself. Now, this is really important, and I think I want to go back to something that Cheng said. I think it's really important because I think oftentimes one of the ways that I encourage myself is to realize that, hey, there are actually people who are in much worse situations. That's one of the ways I encourage myself. For instance, I may not be able to have that space that I want, you know, I may be facing all these challenges, but guess what? I still have a job. You know, Cheng, you would attest to this, you know, here in the US, I don't, it's probably different in New Zealand, but so many people, so many of our colleagues have actually lost their jobs. Departments have closed, faculties have closed, departments have merged, even universities have closed because of COVID. You know, so people who even had tenure, people who were tenured have actually lost their jobs here in the US, you know, in academia. So it's been really crazy, you know, for so many other people. And so I may not have all of that, but at least I still have a job. At least I still have a family. I can still take care of my family. You know, I'm not hungry, I'm not suffering, you know. So this is one of the ways I encourage myself. And this even works not just for this context, I think, for me personally, but even just about the generic attitude towards life. You know, sometimes we complain about, there are too many things that we complain about, that if we would just realize, you know, that there's so many other people, you know, who have far worse, that they're still surviving, we wouldn't even complain about those things. One of the ways you can also encourage yourself is to practice some sort of self-talk. I think self-talk is actually a concept that has been studied, you know, in interpersonal communication. You can talk to yourself, you know. I think it's a practice that so many people do not do, you know. For instance, I don't know the last time you looked at the mirror and spoke to yourself. I mean, it may sound like you're crazy if someone is watching you, like, what's going on? You know, you're talking all by yourself, you know. But
Don't do that in
somehow
your partner.
but somehow our minds and our psychology has a way of internalizing what it hears, the things that we hear, you know. Literally, if you tell yourself a lie often enough, at some point when you say it, it would sound like it's true. It wouldn't even feel like it's a lie anymore to you if you say it often enough. So you can practice like self-talk, right? So you can tell yourself everything will be okay, you know, everything will be fine. You know, you're gonna go through this. You're subsequently going to be able to go through. You know, be strong. You know, you're strong. You got this. You can handle this. So you can encourage yourself. These words of encouragement are very helpful. And then one thing that was really helpful to me personally is that because I have a mentor here on our campus, and I know that, you know, not everyone may have the luxury of having a mentor, or a good one for that matter. But my mentor has been very supportive, you know, to me. There are times just when I felt so discouraged or so overwhelmed, and I would reach out to my mentor, and she would encourage me. You know, she would encourage me. And there are things, for instance, that I did not understand, or I may not really know how to go about them. You know, I would reach out for help. You know, it's okay to reach out for help. If, you know, especially like for me, I wasn't familiar very much with, facilitating learning in online spaces. For you, it might be about technology. It might be that you're not really familiar with this type of technology. You can reach out to help. It's okay to reach out for help. When you reach out for help, it doesn't make you feel. It shouldn't make you feel any less of yourself. So reach out for help, if needed, in all the areas that you need, and speak to a mentor or to someone that can be very supportive to you as well. And the last thing I'd like to say is that take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, if you are not okay, nothing is going to move, so you have to really pay attention to your mental health, and to your physical health. I guess for all of us, for instance, at least for me, I will speak for myself, this COVID thing has put a toll on our mental and on our physical health. Maybe some of us have become of added weight, will become, too heavy, uh, and all of that. I mean, just the whole experience itself, it's been psychologically and emotionally just very difficult, right? But you have the responsibility, to take care of yourself. Maybe for you, it might mean that you should slow down. For some other person, it might just mean, hey, slow down. Maybe you don't really have to put so much pressure on yourself. Maybe you need to take it a little easy on yourself. I know that we have a lot of all these requirements for tenure, things that you have to do. I'm grateful that my university was able to factor that into consideration, on how it affects people who are on a tenure track position. But sometimes it really might just mean that, hey, just slow down and take it a little easy on yourself, and that in some way would even affect your psychology and your emotions. So I think for me, this would probably be some of the ways that tips that I would give someone who wants to be efficient, in this season. I found these to be very helpful for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Elvis, man, just asking you, how many courses do you teach every semester? Just to understand your workload. How
For
many
me,
how many classes you're
three,
teaching?
three,
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 yeah.
three classes.
Okay,
Yes, three.
that's actually a lot of classes you teach. As opposed to, I don't know if Daisy knows, we all studied in Finland. So coming from different education system, now me and Elvis in the US, Diego at Massey. So it's kind of, we teach it way more than we used to back in Finland, right? So and three full
Not
classes.
only, not only, not only in terms of the number of courses you teach, but also the number of sessions that you have.
Yeah,
You know, in
twice a
Finland,
week or two
yeah,
and a half hours a week at least.
yeah, we had the liberty in Finland, for instance, to, you know, you actually decide how many sessions you want to have. At least that's what it used to be for
Exactly.
me.
Yeah.
I decide, like, oh, if I want to have 5 sessions, if I want to have 10 sessions, if I want to have 15 sessions, it's really up to you. You have that liberty to decide. But here, that was one of the things I had to adjust to. I actually have to teach 3 hours every week for all through the semester. And
Mhm.
and in Finland, you even choose when you want to teach. Like, okay, I may want to teach this week and then teach again in 3 weeks. So there's all of that luxury.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a little different here, and I had to quickly adjust to that as well. Yeah,
I think so. We've had it the easy way before, I guess, and then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
being all of a sudden putting this system is like you're gonna teach, but yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a number of tips that I think we all have shared it collectively. I think this is more about building the community resilience, and Diego has mentioned having that routine. I think, right, for those of us who didn't have a routine, struggled in the very beginning, is like how to work effective from home. What are the most effective schedule for me, right? And for those who live with family, especially with the little kids, of course you have to work around their schedule, right? What they do.
Yeah.
So I have some free time here, so I probably can do something. I think sometimes people pay less attention to physical space, right? Like Elvis, like has to turn his storage room into a temporary work office, right? So I think the work atmosphere matters, right? The physical space matters. So in a way, we can work anywhere, anytime, but definitely not at the same quality, right? If you want to work effectively, efficiently, want to use your time well, and then you definitely need to pay attention to your schedule, to your physical environment. I think another point that obviously mentioned is also practice self-love. I think that stands throughout time, but I think it's particularly important at this moment, right after COVID. I think we're all using COVID as an opportunity to reflect on these points, remind us we're fortunate, right? Don't focus on what you don't have, but instead of what you do have. After all, COVID is more deadly to those elderly, for those people who have previous conditions. I think at least we who are present here, we're fairly young and healthy. So, we're not even the most vulnerable group here to talk about it, right? There are people and the health professionals, seriously. My both parents are health professionals, so I understand some of the struggles they had to go through. And they're kind of being disconnected with their family is kind of the same. Last year, I almost went back to China to visit my parents, and thank God I didn't. For some reason, I was invited by a colleague of mine to do a visiting professor thing, so I went. If I went back to China, I don't know if I still have my current job, because I wouldn't be able to perform my job while in China. And of course, there's no way for me to travel. I think it'd be fairly hard to travel. At least, I don't know. I could easily lose my job that way, and have my whole future just destroyed right there. And it was very, I have to say, I was fortunate enough to be where I am here today, right? Okay. Any last point you want to make just regarding this topic, guys?
Well, something just came to my mind that I used to do before. So, like, especially when you have kids, because I knew myself, I knew I need silence and quiet to work. I had to reschedule my day in such a way that I would work when the kids are sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have that quiet, so you can always figure out, a way to get it work, so yeah.
Yeah, just developing an entirely different work routine and schedule, right? It's just, of course it's hard. Of course it's different. Any last point from you guys?
I just want to say, I at least now I have a sense of hope, I think things have gotten, a lot better, especially here in the US. I know in New Zealand, you all are doing amazing, over there. It's been crazy here in the US, but things are getting really better. The rules have been relaxed. I now have access to my office. I just want to say there's hope, there's hope. Let's have a sense of hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think always have that positive mindset, that always helps. I think for the US, I was kind of curious because I have many friends that live in New Zealand, so I kind of know these two countries. New Zealand was performing very well because it's an island country, so you can really just close its borders. No one comes in, no one goes out.
Exactly.
So when we had lockdowns, like they had some, like their lockdowns like jokes to us, seriously, like level 4 and all that. They lasted like 2 weeks and they's gone. Seriously, all the bars and cafes are back.
Yeah, to some extent we are lucky because we're so remote. Okay, this is why we can't still keep the virus away. But I mean, we can't keep the door closed forever, right? So the life still need to carry on. The trade, economy, export, education, we still need to be prepared when the world is back to normal. So I think in terms of like vaccine rollout, this kind of thing, we are pretty much left behind. So I hope that New Zealand government can really, accelerate the process. I know that it's kind of like hard, probably. I don't know. I mean, economic wise, but still, we, as Elvis just mentioned, we still need to have hope. For example, like international education, we are kind of slowly bringing back our international students through the border exemption. Even the process is quite a kind of like painful. We go through different like steps, put so much effort, and just get a few bunch of students back. But that's a good sign though. That means once we figure out the right process, and then and once they you know, technology helps, for example, like the vaccine really helps, and then the life will be back to normal bit by bit, step by step. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the points I wanted to make is when we compare the COVID preparation or how COVID has been handled by different nations, the big ones, the small ones handle that very differently. Like New Zealand, we were able just to, you know, was able to shut down, and it worked very well. But big nations then have the capacity to develop vaccines and roll them out very quickly. I think in China too, you know, China is able to develop its own vaccines and, you know, roll out very quickly, and same for the US. But on the other hand, for the smaller nations, I think UK has decided to open its borders no matter what. It's like, you know, by now it's too late to do anything. That's might as well just open everything. So it's very different strategies and mentalities. And of course, we live in that macro environment that we individuals react to those situations too. But I agree that the borders will have to be open one day. And the governments needs to make sure that, you know, again, that kind of goes back to the World Communication Association theme, right? Connecting the world, facilitating intercultural dialogues. We need to have the borders open and want to have our lives back. And again, we are here together. We're working together towards that goal. And yeah, I think we're pretty much there. We're a few minutes short, but I think we've covered a lot of the ground today. It's just about 4 of us, but I don't think, you know, I always loved WCA sessions because it's just a few of us. Everyone gets a chance to really speak their mind, to get to know each other. I enjoy the sessions very much, and I'm gonna just pause the recording right here.